everybody. Welcome back to another interesting episode on the podcast Behind the Scenes of Health with Dr. Ron. I'm your host, Dr. Ron. And if you're new here, we share interesting stories about people who are doing amazing things in the medicine. And today we have with us in the studio Dr. Peace Alabi-Ojima, who recently marched into the US residency program. So she'll be sharing her journey, how all of that came about, really. Thank you so much, Peace, for joining us in the studio.
Thank you so much for having me here. So excited.
So, if you guys are watching, YouTube says a lot of you guys are not subscribed. So, just pause and hit the subscribe button. And yeah, back to the conversation. So, I usually like starting with, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and your medical background?
Okay, sure, I can. My name is Peace. I was born and brought up here in Nigeria and second of five. So I grew up in my house. My dad is a medical doctor, so watching him as a doctor, he really inspired my journey to being a physician. I loved the fact that he paid attention to details and how he used to care for patients. So I just wanted to be a doctor like him. So that's pursued and that drove me rather to pursuing medicine. I got admitted into Benjamin S. Carson School of Medicine back at university, and it was in medical school. I think my fifth year that I decided I wanted to be a pediatrician. So I already had like that path. It was a path that I knew I was definitely going to take. So as soon as I was done with my internship, youth service, just like a month after my youth service, I started residency. So
Oh, I was fast.
yes, I'm currently a third year pediatric resident. I wrote my Part 1 exam last year, so I'm a senior resident in pediatrics at the University of Abuja Teaching Hospital. But then I knew that there was more, so I really, really wanted to explore other options. I wanted to go to a more global scene like the United
Mhm.
States. And so that was what led me to writing my USMLE. And I'm glad that I'm here today. So that.
Thank you so much. So, I mean, a lot of people are on the PLAB pathway. People look at PLAB probably because it's easier or whatever. I don't know. So, why USMLE?
Okay, so for me, I also had that confusion at some point, PLAB, USMLE, even though I had always wanted to go to the US. There's just something about it that appeals to me. I think that it's a more fast-paced kind of environment, and
Mhm.
the UK is also good. I mean, I know that there are people there that are also doing good stuff. But then for me, I just felt like I belonged there. And another thing is going into after writing your SMLE, you can match straight into residency. I've never really seen
Okay.
myself. I've actually never worked as a medical officer for a day. Aside my service here, I never worked as a medical officer. So it was not what I didn't want to. I just knew that I liked pediatrics and I just wanted to go to a place where I know that as soon as I go there, I would continue doing what I love. So, which was why I chose pediatrics and why I chose the US. And pediatrics in the US is about 3 years, while in the UK it's like 8 years.
Mhm.
It's a huge difference in
Wow.
that. Yeah. So, so it was like a huge factor for me. So, yeah.
So USMLE is very expensive. We see people complain about the dollar exchange rate and all of that. So how were you able to sort of navigate the expensive nature of this exam?
Okay. So first I knew that it was a very capital intensive process. So I made sure that when I was going in, I had a plan. I because I was starting residency, I knew that I didn't want to work as a medical officer. So I started residency and then the first salary they were paying was I think 280. So I was saving 200K out of that. And at that time,
Wow.
2022, I think the exchange rate then was like 600, like 650, because I'm the first
Mhm.
around 650 in that 2022. The first conversion I did when after I had saved a couple of like some amount in December of 2022, it was about 650
Yeah.
to $1. And then the step one exam was like I think it was 1,160 $65 for step one. But then even before step one, you had to do the ECFMG registration, which was about
Yeah.
$165. So in total, say 1,200 and something. So see, at 650, it was a bit above 700K or like 800K generally plus,
Yeah.
including the registration for the exam, then the ECFMG certification. So I mean, I started working in March of 2022, saving 200K every month. By the end of the year, I had like enough for that. But then I had to pay for the question bank for 6 months. So I had to get like some support from my parents.
Yeah.
So I actually did have support, even though most of the money came from me. It came from my very frugal, because I was very, very frugal with my spending. I just did the necessary things. I bought fuel for my car, had made sure I always had food to eat. But then aside that, I didn't used to go out. So there was always food at home. I always used to tell myself there's food at home. So I didn't indulge in any excess. So I think that was really what helped me. But then it became really challenging when the dollar rates kept on going up,
Yeah.
up, 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 up. If I had enough money the first time, I would have converted like everything I needed. Because at the end of the day, currently a dollar is about 1.6, let's say 1.6. That's like the rough estimate
Yeah.
at the moment. And it is way, way, way more expensive. It's going to be way more expensive for those who want to start the journey. But one thing I would say is that you should start anyway, because I actually wanted to start this right from when I was done with medical school during my
Okay.
intern year. But then I kept on posting it. I was like, oh, it's expensive. But you see, I took it when the exam was, because then a dollar to naira was like 300, and I was saying it was expensive then.
And it kept on becoming
Exactly. It kept
expensive.
on being. So I think my advice to anyone is to just start, really. Somehow for me, I would say that my family was very supportive, my husband very supportive, and I also tried to be really disciplined with my finances. So that's what really helped me.
I think it's good you in being honest about getting that support that you had, because a lot of people don't sort of see these things that happen behind the scenes really. So you were saving 2K, living on a K per month, cutting off a lot of expenses that you thought, okay, I can do without this ones for now, and you still had family support behind. So that makes a lot of sense. Bearing in mind that you started residency like almost immediately, and given the nature of how the program is, how were you able to prepare for the exams?
That was also a really tough one for me, really. But what I did was I wrote my step one in 2023 June, and I started residency 2022. So I knew that it was going to be difficult. So what I did was, as soon as I got into residency, I focused. Like my first 6 months, I worked really, really hard. I tried to make sure I understood the system in residency, because I knew that, and I also studied a lot so that the deficiency won't show. Because I knew that once I start preparing for my step exams, it would be like really difficult for me to pay attention to residency and also the USMLE. So I didn't really, really prepare much for the USMLE almost all through 2022. But then
Uh-huh.
there's this resource that we use for USMLE, Boards and Beyond. So it has different topics, different subjects rather, different like it has CVS, it has endo. So if I were to be doing a particular rotation, I would go through all the boards and beyond videos for that particular rotation. So like my first rotation in residency was hematology and cardio. So I went through all the boards
Okay.
and beyond videos for that particular rotation. So it really even helped me, because there were certain things that people I started with didn't know that I knew. And so like I just kind of tried to find a middle ground between residency and the USMLE. But then, like I said, I gave myself time. I made sure that I didn't just start preparing for USMLE as soon as I started residency. I had to make sure I understood the ropes of residency. I worked really hard. And after like my first 6 months, I started preparing for my step one. As by that time I was a bit comfortable, so it really didn't even show. People didn't know, because that's year 2023 when I wrote my step one day, I was awarded the best resident in my department. So they didn't really know.
Uh-uh.
They didn't know that people were like, so many people were surprised because it wasn't obvious that I was preparing for an exam. And so when I started preparing after work, I was actually in a lighter position, a lighter rotation for my step one. So after work,
Okay.
I'll just stay back in the hospital, study for like 5 hours, then go home, rest a bit.
5 hours.
Yes, I studied an average of 5 hours every day. Sometimes it was more. Most times it was more actually, but let's say an average of 5 hours every day till I wrote my step one.
That's intense.
Really intense. So, but the step one, because I studied well for my step one, I had a good foundation. So step two was a bit easier. I didn't take so much, even though I was in emergency pediatric unit when I prepared for step two. But because I had a good step one knowledge base, it's really helped me
Yeah.
in my step two. So, and that's why I was able to get like a good score. So I think that was what helped me
Interesting. 5 hours every day consistently.
consistently.
So that means it's no joke because I bet I've spoken to other people who tells you that you must study that hard for the exams. And I've also heard of people who had to sort of take time off work so that they can focus solely on this due to the wide knowledge gap you have to sort of bridge or fill up or something.
Yeah.
Interesting. So looking back now in hindsight, if you're gonna change anything about how you prepared for the exam, would anything change? Would you do anything better?
Well, maybe not really, because I think it worked for me. I had a really good score. So I think that I don't think I would have really changed anything. I mean, I would have preferred not to have to go to work while studying because it did, and I'm not going to lie. So I'll be really honest, it's a very difficult thing. I lost a lot of weight. So people would see me and they keep on asking me what's wrong, what's the problem. People that didn't know that I was on this journey. So it took a lot from me actually. It made me like, and I'm not a stress eater. Some people eat when they are stressed, but I'm not. So it kind of
Yeah.
made me lose so much weight. So it kind of affected me in that sense. But so I would have preferred if I could take time off work. But I knew that this was where the bulk of the money was coming from, right? So
So you
obviously
had to also
I
pay
had to
attention
also
to it.
combine. So I started my residency for two reasons. I wanted to have like significant pediatric experience since I knew I was going to apply for it in the US, and also the financial aspects. Like it actually did help. And as residents in Nigeria, currently we get like some other benefits here and there that sometimes could really help, like in supporting the exams. I'm not saying anybody should use their benefit because the benefits are actually for our Nigerian medical exams, anyways. Yeah.
So your preparation now, was it solo preparation or did you have groups where people sort of study in groups or all of that?
So step one was solo. I actually didn't know anyone at that time that was taking it. And in my class, I'm the only one currently that has like my set. I'm the only one. So I asked around. I couldn't really find anyone. So it was solo. Then for step two, it
Okay.
was mostly solo. But then a month to my exam, I was able to get like a study group where we reviewed question banks together. So I would say most of my studying was actually solo. But before I started, I went on YouTube. There are a lot of resources on
Okay.
YouTube. You'd see people that like, the Indian guys, they like to share their experiences a lot.
Yeah.
So I watched their videos, I digested it. They'll talk about how they got step one score of 260 and all of that. So I would take a mental note of all the resources they used. I would look for them because these resources, and they are free. You find them on Telegram. You see a couple of these links that have those resources for free. So I was able to so that was what I used. I kind of got a blueprint from them, and then I was able to like replicate that, and it really worked for me.
So it basically sounds as if it's more around figuring out what works for you and
Yeah,
sort of sticking to the plan.
exactly.
So there's this misconception that says you must sort of go to the US for clinical observership to stand a high chance of ranking in the process. So did you go for clinical observership?
I didn't. I planned to, but I couldn't
Yeah.
actually. I couldn't because I couldn't get visa, and then also it's really, really expensive. So I just decided to choose my battles. So I couldn't go for US clinical experience. That's not to say that it's not important, it is. But then pediatrics, another thing to note is that pediatrics is competitive, but not as competitive as some specialties. It's not as
Okay.
competitive as maybe general surgery and all of those. Another thing is I was in pediatric residency here. So it kind of showed them
Mhm.
my commitment. I think that the reason why they didn't look at that aspect of my CV so much, like the fact that I didn't have US clinical experience. I was in residency. I got a letter from the head of department of my residency here in Nigeria. I was awarded
Okay.
best pediatric resident. So those things already kind of spoke for me. So I won't say that people shouldn't get US clinical experience, but I'll just say that if you absolutely cannot, just try and boost other aspects of your CV, because I also know other people that matched without US clinical experience. But if you absolutely can, if you can, then please try
Yeah.
and get your clinical experience, because it's still important. There are some university programs that would not even look at your CV without your clinical experience.
Interesting.
Yeah, there are some. In fact, some programs will filter you out. They'll filter your application out based on the fact that you do not have US clinical experience. So
Clinical experience.
yes. So you can just check their website and then look at it, see if US clinical experience is an absolute necessity.
So aside the clinical experience, right? What are the key things are people sort of looking out for in terms of, you know, getting into or standing a high chance of getting accepted?
Okay, so some other things, publications. For pediatrics, publications, maybe just a few. You don't need like so much. But for people that are going for other like specialties that are more competitive, you need to have like quality publications, not just anyhow kinds of publications. So if you can get publications, poster presentations, go for conferences and see if you can print your paper there, abstracts. So it can even just be something simple like an abstract and all of that. For me, I
Yeah.
had two publications, but I was not the first author. And then even oral presentations, so like stuff that you are doing in your place of work, when if you have to present anything relating to that particular specialty. Since I was in pediatric residency, I had so many presentations in pediatrics. So it just showed my commitment. Like my CV, everything about my CV was pediatric. So they were so certain that this person wants to be a pediatrician. And
Yeah.
they try to see how committed you are to your specialty. So that's why publications in that particular specialty is important. Then also your volunteer experience. So
Okay.
going for outreaches, if you want to be a surgeon, when you hear about free surgery, people organizing free surgeries, you can decide to just scrub in and all of those things. So I think outreach, at least maybe have one or two on your CV. Then I think some leadership experience too. So it can just be being a member. For me, the leadership experiences I had on my CV were like maybe a time when I was part of a club and I had to lead something, or there was like an outreach and I had to be like there was a time that there was World Breastfeeding Week. I was one in charge of the media. So I mean you know how to package it. Still you're a leader
Yeah.
in that sense. So they look out for leadership experiences too. I'm trying to see if there's some other things. Well, so basically as doctors, we already have like so many experiences. It's just to find a way to write it down. It's just that's the major thing. Find a way to write it down, to talk about those experiences. Yeah.
So when you say write it down, is it writing it in your CV or having a supporting statement that sort of highlights all of these things? How does it work?
Okay, so writing it in your CV, there's like the CV is a very, very, I think it was one of the most stressful parts of the application for me because you write a personal
Interesting.
statement, then you write a CV. The CV is very long. You are expected to, there's space for 10 experiences. And you don't just write those
Oh.
experiences. You talk about the setting of the experience, then you have like, I think 1,000 characters to describe that
Mhm.
experience. So like if you there are people that even pay people for services to help them write it. But I did mine myself anyways. I did mine myself. So you just have to know how to sell yourself. That's just it.
Mm-hmm.
So what I think that one thing that probably would have helped me was that I knew how to sell myself, the things that I had done. Before then, I was wondering, I would see some people's CVs. I know that, okay, I do not have this kind of experience. But then from what I
Okay.
had, the little I had, I just found a way to sell myself because, so that's why I'm saying that everybody should just look at stuff they've done. People are doing important things. It's just that at that time, you may not think that it's that important, but it is actually
Yeah.
important.
So let's look at the application process in a bit more detail. What's that process like? You already said it's difficult. How difficult is that process, the application process?
So the application process, the first thing is you purchase what they call ERAS token. So that's like I think $165. So when you purchase it, it gives you access to the application, to the website, the ERAS website that has the application. So
Okay.
then you start filling in the details. Like it's very long. It took me like maybe 2 months to fill that application because I had to
Wow.
like try to keep on thinking and I wanted to be really intentional. I didn't just want to feel it anyhow. So it took me about 2 months to maybe 1 month and 2 weeks, 6 weeks to fill that application because every day. And then I kept on sending my application to people who are already in the US to help me look at it because they are there already. So they know the things that are important to these people. So I had very amazing people who I reached out to at no cost and they helped me look. People I don't know. I just reached out to them on LinkedIn, especially people in pediatrics. So I'm like, oh, I'm applying to pediatrics. Can you help me look at my CV? And then maybe some people from my school. So I sent my CV to like 5 people that helped me go over it. And then everybody would come with their own corrections here and there. I'll take the one I want to take, the one I don't want. I'll just leave it like that. So after the app, and then so you write out your application on the ERA. Then there are some documents that you need to upload or your school needs to upload. So your transcript. So that's also a very entire hassle. You know how Nigerian schools can be. So you have to keep on chasing them for them to upload because they have a portal. If your school has participated in the US residency process before in Nigeria, they would have a portal that they've already created. And so they are expected to upload your medicals. There's this MSP, I think it's Medical School Performance Evaluation, your transcript.
Okay.
So that one also took some time for me. I started it early, but it still took a lot of time, like 3 months before they were able to even upload all of that. So you just have to be chasing them. Then the application. So when you're applying, you apply for the first 30 programs, it's $30. It's $11 per application for the first 30. So
Wow.
30,
So each program is
yeah, so
$11.
that's 330. Any other number above 30 is $30 per application.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how expensive it is. I think that the application was even, for some people, it was what took the bulk of their money. It's more expensive. For someone, for instance, applying to 2 programs, to 80 programs rather, the application process would be more expensive than even step one and two combined. So those are
Interesting.
the things that are really, really expensive. So I applied to 50. So that was, so you can, I think about $960 or so. Let's say about 1,000.
Just call it 1,000.
Yes, like 1,000 about that. So that's the application. So after that, you wait for interviews. I mean, and then the waiting period is also a very, very nerve-wracking period because you hear people on Reddit. If you're on Reddit, avoid Reddit. If you're on Reddit, people will be like, "This program has sent out application invitations," and then you'll just be having
Yeah.
palpitations. I haven't gotten any application, any invitation. Why? And all
Invitation.
of that. But they send their interviews in waves. For pediatrics, they didn't even start sending interviews till like I think middle of October. So you start waiting for the interviews. There's a separate software that they use called Thalamus. It's an app that you can download on your phone, but then you can use it online as well, where you can
Yeah.
schedule your application and your interviews, and then when you schedule your interviews, then you can. Some of them they'll send you the details on that Thalamus app and you can use the Thalamus app actually for interviews, but most programs use Zoom for their interviews.
Okay.
Yeah, so after that, then you just wait. You rank your program in I think February. Then the waiting period for March day begins. Yeah.
So you talked about applying for 50 programs, right? So does it mean that the more programs you apply for, the higher your chances of matching?
Yes. Well, I was, is it, I think the more programs you apply to, the higher the number of interviews you can get. But then, I mean, you
Okay.
can apply to 100 and not even get a single interview based on how your CV is. There are some things
Yeah.
that may be considered red flags. So maybe if you have had a previous attempt in step exams, they may consider it a red flag. If you have like a very long year of graduation, so maybe you are greater than a particular number and you can't explain. So if you've completed a
Why?
residency, for instance, they can understand, okay, this is why this person is applying now. But then if you're not doing anything active, but it doesn't mean that it's a hopeless case, because in this cycle, I know people that someone I know, I think the oldest person I've seen graduated in 2002 and the person matched. So it's not that it's
Wow.
impossible. And the person did not have, person was like, I think working as a medical officer, not residency or anything, has an MPH. So it's not, I mean, there are red flags, but no red flag is too red. That's what I would say. But there are definitely red
Mm-hmm.
flags. But then everyone should just bear in mind that there are certain red flags. So which is why you put in your best foot. Make sure that when you're taking the steps, you're certain that you're ready. And
Yeah.
then for year of graduation, if you know that you have to work for a particular amount of years, 12 years rather, to save up, should make sure that you're actually doing something that is tangible, something that can like show why you have been away for that
Yeah.
long. And then the way some people try to like cover up for those red flags is that they try to get extensive US clinical experience and letters from US based doctors. So I didn't have
Mm.
any red flags. Maybe the only thing would have been that my year of graduation, but it was 5 years. I just turned 5 years when I was applying. I turned 5 years in September, and that was when I was applying. So for most programs, if it's 5 years, they
Yeah.
would like not have an issue. But then there's still some programs that would have probably filtered me out based on my year of graduation. But then, so I think
Okay.
that's another reason why I had that confidence to apply without US clinical experience. So, like, I mean, so I'm just putting it out there so that nobody will be like, oh, this person
Yeah.
excludes
Yeah.
all clinical experience. I don't know what weight it carries, but I've seen so many people match with tele-rotations, just tele-rotations.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is fine.
Yep. So how did you sort of decide on what programs to apply to?
Okay, so first I did extensive research because that's something that is really important. Since I knew that I couldn't apply to so many, I had to specifically select 50 programs that I knew I would qualify for. So if you go on their websites, you'd see the requirements for international medical graduates. They would say
Mm-hmm.
they require US clinical experience. I didn't have that. So programs that had that strict requirements, I did not apply. But it depends. Some of them would say US clinical experience is preferred. So if I say that, I can still decide that, okay, maybe I'll
Take a
apply.
shot.
But then there are some that would say you must have 6 months US clinical experience. So you already know that those kinds of programs, you should not even bother applying to them.
Yeah.
So I did like extensive research. Then there are some that'll tell you that they prefer people who are 3 years postgraduate, 5 years. I was at 5 years at that time. So I knew that there was no point applying to those kinds of programs. So basically, I did like extensive research. And then another thing is you look at programs that have a history of taking people that look like you. So a program that's taken a Nigerian before, you know that you have a good chance there. A program that has
Yeah.
taken not just a Nigerian, maybe an African, you should have a
Mm-hmm.
good chance there. So you can even look up those people on LinkedIn, which was what I did. So I'll go to the programs, I'll look at the residents that are in pediatrics. If I see Nigerians, I'll look for them on LinkedIn. I'll check their qualifications. If I don't see anything, I can even reach out to them, ask them, okay, so what do you think were factors that played a huge role in this program accepting you and all of that. So, and then also one thing I think I have not mentioned before is making sure that you make a lot of connections with people. It's very, in fact, it's one of the
Is it on
huge
LinkedIn or where?
LinkedIn. If you can go for conferences, connect with people. But my own was mainly through the LinkedIn. So I kept on trying to connect to people on LinkedIn. It may not give you interviews. Like how people promised me they were going to submit my names to their program, but I didn't get an invite in those their programs. But at least it
Yeah.
helped me. They were able to review my CVs, they were able to review my personal statements and all of that. So being connected, trying to connect with people can go a really long way.
Okay. That's interesting. So it's good you're mentioning that you reached out to a lot of people on LinkedIn because I mean these days LinkedIn has become like a very great resource for a lot of people depending on what you're trying to achieve. You can always find people on there who have
Yeah.
sort of walked that path before you. So let's the interview process. How difficult is the interview? How challenging is it really?
Well, it varies for the specialty. I can only speak for pediatrics.
For
So for
PTR.
pediatrics, mostly what they wanted to know was your personality. So they will ask you questions. So questions like, okay, first one, you obviously have to be able to talk about yourself. And they
Yeah.
want to do that in less than 2 minutes. So like one
Okay.
minute, 30 seconds. You have an elevator pitch, basically. Tell them about yourself, why medicine, why pediatrics, all of that. And then you also like just sprinkle in fun facts about you, like your hobbies and all of that, something that would make them like remember you. So
Yeah.
for me, I always told them I liked trying out new recipes, and I'll just mention something new that I was trying out. Or and then I'll also add that I like to organize events, and I'll talk about how karaoke nights at my residency currently. I make sure we have that. So they like people that are personable, people that are not just all about work and all of that. Then they would also want to know how you handle stress. That was a question I had. I think almost all my interviews they asked me, so, how do you handle stress? So, you should have, and for the interviews, it's best to have examples. I had so many
Okay.
examples. Being a resident in Nigeria, like I've had so many of those experiences. They also wanted to
Uh-huh.
find out about ethical dilemmas that I had experienced. In the US, you'll experience a lot of that. So they want to see your approach as a physician, how you can handle ethical issues. They want to ask you how you handle a difficult colleague. Maybe a time when you worked with a colleague and the colleague was giving you issues. They want to ask questions about, can you tell me a time you disagreed with a colleague and how did you handle that conflict? Then they would want to also learn about your leadership style. So they can ask questions. They can ask questions about diversity because they asked me a question.
Okay.
I should tell them my experience with diversity. I think then they can ask you, well, I got some weird questions too. Someone asked me if I were to be I think, what did she even say? Was it if I were to be a snack, what would I be? If I were to be a snack, what would I be? So I took her chocolate cake with toppings, and then I explained why. I kind of linked it to my personality. I was like, oh, almost everyone loves chocolate, and I believe I'm that kind of person everyone wants to have around, and all of that.
Yeah.
So, just some kinds of witty questions, but you should learn how to link it to residency and your life generally. And they will also want
Uh-huh.
to know why that particular specialty. So it's important that you have your story. They want to know why you are applying to their hospital because there are so many hospitals you could have applied to. You should also go
Absolutely.
through their websites. They have the information you need on their website. You can talk to residents. They will tell you about the program. They will give you pointers. They can even something that I also made sure I did was if I can find the people, because they'll send you a list of your interviewers before the interview. So you can just
Okay.
look for them on social media, look at their hobbies, and see how you can bring it up when they ask you if you have any questions. So I know that I tried to do that. And then even if I didn't find anything, I'll ask the residents, okay, what does this person like? What does this person like? He'll tell you. So you just kind of bring it up. So the main thing after application, I had a group where we used to practice. We used to literally practice every day for like an
For
hour.
the interviews, right?
Yes, for the interview because the interview is actually about 40% of what makes up your entire package. If they like you, you may even have huge red flags. But if they like you, if you're able to sell yourself, honestly, you definitely get in. So that's why
Mm,
we focus on the interviews a lot.
that's interesting. I mean, talking about the extensive research you mentioned because you applied to like 50 schools or 50 programs.
Yeah.
So basically, that meant you had to research each of these 50 schools or locations and find out what was unique about everybody, people in the department, and all of that,
Yeah.
and still combine this with your regular work.
I actually started doing that like since. So I knew I was going to apply this in 2024. So from
Yeah,
2022, I already made a
you started
list.
doing your homework.
Yes, from 2022, I made a list. So I'll look, I'll research, I'll tell my husband, he'll help me research some of them as well. So it was almost anytime I'm free, even if it's just 30 minutes in a day, but
Yeah,
it's not like every day. Sometimes some weeks I may not even do any research at all. So by the time I was applying, I already had like a good idea of what I was going in for. Maybe
yeah.
also because of my personality, I don't like to rush things. I like to really research into things because it makes me very stressed if I have to make like a decision like within a very short
Absolutely.
time. Yeah, so that was why I also made sure that I did extensive research, and it really, really paid.
Well, I mean, it's paid off finally. You matched, so
Yeah,
all of the hard work finally paid off. So, what was it like waiting for the announcement for match week?
it was short and it was long. I don't even know. I don't know. It was just, I kept on asking myself, why do they have to keep us waiting for this long? It was so
Yeah,
that day I was just keeping myself busy. I just had a lot of activities planned because it comes out like
trying to distract yourself or
yes,
something.
in Nigerian time by 3, that's when it would be out. So I just once it was 2:55, I just sat in front of my laptop. I made a video. I was recording myself because I wanted to I was hoping and praying that it was going to be a good outcome. So I was just
Yeah,
dancing. There was music in the background. I was dancing. I was still nervous, but I was just like, I'll try dance anyways and praise God. And I was just in front of my laptop and thankfully it came. I screamed, I cried. I was just so happy, really. But the waiting period was I had multiple dreams, nightmares of different things.
yeah.
I kept on dreaming about different things. It was a very, but anyways, I'm happy that it came out. It ended well.
Yeah, it just sounds like when you're waiting for all those medical school results
Exactly. That
at
was just the same way I
MBBS 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah,
so
I can't imagine those days. Anyway, that's in the past now, moving ahead. So if someone was starting this journey, right? So what advice would you sort of give to them? Say these are the things I think you need to do. What would you tell them?
okay, so for someone starting the advice now, I would say that it's a journey and they should see it that way. It's a journey
Yeah.
that has a destination. So they should make sure that they understand it. It's a process. You can't rush it, really. It's not something that you should rush because if you rush it, maybe you may end up having some red flags like rushing the exams just because some people I see on social media, so many people like, I'm going to get my first aid now. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Sit down and
Yeah.
decide. Be sure this is what you want because it can be very
Want, yeah.
frustrating. So the first advice, be sure this is what you want, and then treat it as a journey. It's not a sprint, actually. It's a marathon. So make sure you get all your facts right, know what you need, do extensive research. And as long as you can dream it, I believe that it can definitely happen at the end of the day. So it's just for you
Hmm.
to set your mind on it, be determined, and just believe, trust the process. At the end of the day, I believe that everything would work out well. Try and get mentors as well, people that you can ask questions when you have any confusion. There are many people that will be willing to answer you. I'll just message people on LinkedIn and then they'll give me their phone numbers or just call me on WhatsApp. So there are people,
Mm,
so many nice people out there. Don't allow anyone scam you just because they are claiming they would help you out with your personal statement and all of that. So yeah, that would be
yeah.
my advice.
Okay, thanks for that, really. So now that you've matched, what are your next goals and how do you sort of feel about the journey ahead? Traveling to the US, getting into residency.
Well, now that I have matched, I'm really excited, very grateful to God because it has been a lifelong dream. And trying to get everything set for the trip. There's this statement of need that we would need to provide from Ministry of Health, but we need to wait for the
Yeah,
offer letter from the program, which hopefully I would get from my program this week. Like I matched into a really, really amazing program. They've already created a WhatsApp group. That
congrats.
Friday, they sent a WhatsApp message. They added us to the group. They've already started telling us about apartments and everything. So
Uh,
that's why
wow.
they were my number one choice. I already knew that that's how they are. So that's why I decided that, oh, these people are going to be my first choice. So it's to just find a way to get settled, get my visa and leave. But then I have the goal to be the best version of myself, really. I believe that what I did, I believe that in Nigeria, I did not even the best because I was preparing for the steps. So since I was preparing for the
Yeah,
steps, I could not really, really give in as much as I wanted. So I plan to go make my home country proud.
101%.
Exactly. Make my home country proud and then focus on doing fellowship when I'm done with residency by God's grace
Hmm.
and all of that. Yeah. So those are my next plans.
Well, that sounds very exciting, and we are rooting for you. I know typically, I mean, you mentioned that you reached out to a lot of people who sort of supported you along the way. So, where can people reach you in case they probably need somebody to speak to, probably confused along whatever step or stage they are in? So, how can we reach you?
Okay, so they can reach me on LinkedIn. My name is Peace Alabi on LinkedIn. So when they send me a message, even on Twitter actually, they can send. So many people have already sent me like a
Yep.
message on Twitter, and then I give them my WhatsApp number, so they can reach me on LinkedIn or
Yeah.
Twitter, and then I'll definitely respond to them and see how I can help.
Right, that's fine. So I'll probably get your LinkedIn link and Twitter. I'll just put it in the comment section so that people can easily sort of find you. So as we wrap up, do you have any final words, any advice for upcoming USMLE attendees?
Yes. So my advice for those who are upcoming is that they should just put in their best, be the best in whatever you do. It doesn't matter where you are at now. No red flag is too red. That's what I would say. No red flag is too red. So
Yeah,
as long as you can dream it, it can happen. So just make sure that you make the most of where you are. For me, I didn't know that it was going to be my residency that would be like the springboard for getting into pediatrics in the US because most people, that's what they kept on telling me, that I sound like someone that's really passionate. And that's because I put my head in the game here in Nigeria. So it doesn't
yeah.
matter where you are now, just make the most of where you are at. And definitely it will be a stepping stone to where you want to get to.
All right. That sounds very philosophical. Thank you very much. And it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Think we'll still follow your journey and probably invite you for part two, maybe a couple of months or years into the program and sort of share your experience. For those who are watching, I mean, you've heard it all from those who've matched into the programs. And I myself have probably taken some notes to myself in other side because I'm no longer on this side anyway. So, and until the next episode, I'll see you guys again. And it's bye for now.